They thought they were in control, two officers ready to run through the lonely driver and put weight on. But what they didn't know was that the woman behind the steering wheel was the one who was in her hands. That was not all the drivers. Her new boss, the police chief. Kendra Hayes was always a woman with calm power and a woman who knew it would raise it. After years of hard work, the new chapter began today. It was the result of her fighting and overcoming countless barriers, including the judicial system that appears to be built to contain it. She pushed the winding highway down into the city, and the early morning sun threw a warm look on the horizon. Her hands grabbed the handle a little closer than usual. This should be a celebration day, but Kendra couldn't shake the discomfort she had bitten. There was no view of the Cedars in all cities. It was known for its deep, conservative culture. Police officials have long been affected by reports of bias, particularly against minorities. Kendra read the report and listened to it. Many officials expressed dissatisfaction with the appointment. This is a black woman who took over the helm of her department. However, no one retreated. A blue and red blue illuminated her rearview mirror as she just approached the red light. The police car drove behind her and was calm. I instinctively accelerated Kendra's heart rate. She knew this was not a coincidence. She drove to the side of the road, and the grass on her shoulders was under her tires. Two white policemen got out of the car. The senior officer was a man with broad guilt, approaching the car with intentional, measured steps. The young officer approached behind him, and his face approached doubt. Kendra lowered her window, and her pulse was steadily but vigilant. The senior officer leaned forward a little, his eyes searching for her car before resting on her. "License and registration," he told Rundarao. Kendra grabbed the glove compartment and pulled out the document without words. Long ago, she knew that in such circumstances, silence was often the best strategy. The senior officer's eyes narrowed a little when she handed her, but he said nothing. However, the young officers were less passive. "What brings you here?" "This area is not accurate, whether I know what I mean." Kendra's stomach opened, but it remained calm. "I'm on the way to work." "And where exactly is it?" The young officer got a little closer. His smile suggested he already had assumptions about her. Kendra hesitated for a while. She was able to properly clarify her position and put an end to the charade. But something told her to hold her back. She was actually in this situation too often. The dynamics of power here cannot be denied, and she didn't want to start her first day by bringing precise tensions with the immediate leading officer. "You quickly understand enough. Respond quietly. Lock your eyes in the young officer." There was no problem with her voice, but she made it clear that she was not threatened. The senior executive wanted things to escalate and go in. "You can continue to accept this if you wish." There was a veiled threat, a subtle flexion of authority. Kendra felt how her patience had become tenuous. She endured this type of treatment for years. It is disrespect, behavior, and assumption based solely on skin color. She was fighting so hard that she climbed too hard to slip. Kendra took a deep breath and decided that she had played long enough. "That wouldn't be necessary," she said. "I'm the chief of Kendra Hayes. We recommend that you rethink how you will deal with this situation." The air shift was noticeable. Both officers were frozen. The senior officer blinked in confusion, rolling his brows as his brows hit him like a blow to the intestines. The young officer's contented expression disappeared and was replaced by a touch of shock and panic. "Are you the chief?" The senior executives clearly did their best. "Yes." Kendra and her voice were unshakable. "And I want to know why I was stopped and why these questions happened." None of the executives spoke for a while. The young people groped at his words and tried to find an apology, but the damage had already been done. The dynamics of performance changed, and they knew. The senior officer had a hard time clearing his throat and regaining his tranquility. There must have been a misunderstanding. Kendra didn't finish him. No, this is not a misunderstanding, she interrupted her tone. This is exactly the problem. They try to stop people like me and bending their authority because they believe they can stop people like them. The senior officer opened his mouth to protest, but there were no words. He knew she was right. Kendra's gentle and unwavering behavior made her behavior worse. They looked, they continued. Her eyes were on her. It is an executive like you who will make you feel distrustful of the system, and they are people like me who are here to change it. Both officers were silent and their faces were colored. Kendra could feel how the weight at the moment sinks. This wasn't just her. This was about everyone who was unfairly stopped, interviewed, and harassed because they didn't include anyone who belonged to a particular room. She left the car and stood in a wonderful position as she spoke to her. You will personally tell me in the next few weeks. I check all the traffic stops you have made, and I suggest you think long and so much about how you will deal with yourself from now on. The senior officer finally found his voice. We are not rude, boss. It's not going to happen again. Kendra nodded, despite knowing that his words were empty. It may happen again with these two, but it may happen with others too. That was why she was here. Sugi's view. To eradicate the deep sheet prejudice that police have been bothering me for too long. It's fine, she says quietly, before turning the car again. Kendra took a moment to breathe when she left. She won this round, but there are more fights ahead of her. Her position as a police chief was more than just a title. It was a responsibility. The responsibility to ensure she has to endure what she has just experienced. Later that day, Kendra gathered the departments for her first meeting. The tension in the room was fat when she was standing in front of the officer and paying attention to everyone in which her presence existed. She spoke of the events this morning and left no details. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. She began to stabilize her voice. But I'm here to make it clear that this type of behavior is finished. All officials in this department are being criticized for how he treats citizens of the Cedarview, regardless of his breed, gender, or background. An uncomfortable tweet passed through the room, but Kendra was not convulsing. She was fighting life for justice, but she didn't want to stop it now. This is your chance to prove that you are a kind of officer who serves in sincerity, she continued. But you know that. I do not tolerate distortion. I do not tolerate disrespect. And I don't tolerate anyone who thinks he is beyond the law. Her words echoed through the quiet space. Some officers moved uncomfortably, while others nodded to the quiet agreement. Kendra could see who was ready to stand with her and who wasn't. But that wasn't a role. She was ready for the challenge. Over the next few weeks, Kendra's encounters in the community have expanded. For some, it was a sign that the change was finally here. It was a wake-up call for others. The media captured the winds of history, and soon Kendra became a symbol of what Cedarview needs. Those who fear oppose fraud have decided to reform the broken system. But Kendra knew this was just the beginning. There was a lot to do. Every station, every encounter, every decision is checked. But she was ready. After all, she hadn't fought for years to remain silent. Now the struggle for justice was not over. But at this moment, Kendra, who was kicked out of these two humiliated officers, certainly knew one thing. She was exactly where she had to be.